question is, how has video game journalism evolved since its like invention in the late 70s, early 80s to now in 2025?
I think I don't know. I think it seems to be pretty boring now, unfortunately. I think that I don't really see a lot of kind of imagination on online games journalism. What was great was like when we started with Games Master, there was a whole load of magazines, Crash, Zap 64, The One, PC Zone. The writing in all those magazines in the 90s was so kind of funny and rebellious and personality filled. I loved the fact that all of the magazines would have on their page 3, we'd have like funny pictures of all the writers and a little bit about them. And when I look on the likes of, Kotaku and whatever, and all the video game review sites online, it seems that it's a bit corporate, really, these days. And that's what I really like about The Guardian, is that The Guardian is The Guardian is one of the few mainstream journalistic outlets for video games anyway. But I think they do it with a kind of sense of personality and colour that I think is essential. You're talking about an art form that is the most colourful, the most imaginative, the most kind of bombastic of all art forms, and to treat it in any way other than with kind of big personality, I think doesn't do it any justice.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think that? Because again, Harry's, you're only what, 17 now?
Yeah, 17.
But I remember back to those days of, you had Charlie Brooker, didn't you, right, on stuff like that?
Yeah.
He was a kind of journalist. But yeah, again, it is, you don't have that anymore. Why do you think that is? Why do you think we've had this lack of, yeah.
Money. Bigger budgets for games, much more risk. AAA titles have to land. So, there's so many occasions now where they don't release code or playable games to journalists in advance of some AAA titles because they're so terrified of negative reviews. So, yeah, back in the days, games were cheaper to make. A lot of them were, made by a couple of guys in their bedrooms. So,
yeah.
It wasn't, you didn't have $100 million budget games that were coming out. So sadly, it is the reason for everything else that's wrong in the world. It's money, money, money.
So that's an access question then, in terms of, to guarantee access to these games in the first place, to guarantee that you're in the loop, you have to give up, you have to toe the corporate line.
I think so. I must stress that that's not a part of the industry that I've ever kind of been involved in. But we did have it once on Games Master. Actually, there was a PR person for a certain games company was told to come down, get a positive review of their game on the show, to do whatever she had to do. With Dominik Diamond to make that happen, and that did not happen. No part of that happened. I have to say.
I thought you were going to say, and I married her or something there.
No.
Yeah. But that was still. So that sort of blandified it slightly nowadays. That you've not got these developers on, as you say, a couple of guys in bedrooms and knocking out sort of basic but cool games. AAA's sort of killed it a little bit there.
Yeah, I think also because it's such an arms race now to kind of get stuff out there. When you're dealing in a market of kind of clicks and likes and traffic, and if you've got a review on YouTube, you need to get a certain amount of likes to get your advertising, and the only way you can do that is by getting the exclusive review up there before anyone else of a big AAA game. So I don't doubt for a second that there are things agreed to behind the scenes in return for that. And it's not just games. My day job is in music radio out here in Canada, and radio used to be absolutely infamous for it. The great payola scandals where record companies would pay you money to get their songs on the air, and then even to a lesser extent where I've worked at stations where we're told, okay, you can get the exclusive play of, this artist's next song, but only if you agree to put 3 of our other artists on the record label on your regular schedule as well. So it's not just games, that's just the way that it works,
Yeah, money finds its way, doesn't it? What else have we got, Harry?
So what was it like being a fan of video games and back in the day where it was like really nerdy and really uncool? What was it like being a fan of it?
It's interesting because I think that what was the great thing about Games Master was that we managed to make that whole thing cool because we were a top TV show, and I was absolutely gobsmacked when we did the Games Master the Oral History book a couple of years back. I got so many messages on Twitter and whatnot from people who said, look, I didn't have a lot of friends at school. I love video games. I was bullied because of it, called a nerd. And then all of a sudden there was this video game show. It was one of the biggest shows. And all of a sudden, through that, I became popular, and I found other people and who we weren't afraid to say that we liked video games anymore. So I'm really proud of the fact that Games Master brought that kind of into the mainstream in terms of acceptability, and not just Games Master. I think things like the Sega marketing department at the time and all the commercials that they were coming out with, which were just absolute at the cutting edge of wit and creativity, that they made games cool as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the time as well, when we were researching, I was giving Harry a potted history of Games Master and stuff, and we went to look for other examples of the genre in mainstream TV, and there's a couple of attempts, but nothing really hit it like Games Master.
No.
Why was that, do you think? Right?
Because our first Games Master, we wanted to make an entertaining TV show first and foremost that just happened to be about video games, and I think that was the key. That I'll go to my grave saying we were a light entertainment show that just happened to be featuring the most entertaining thing in the world at that time. So yeah, it didn't. Nothing went on the show unless it was engaging. It was funny more than anything else.
For sure, yeah. Harry?
So video game journalism nowadays is mostly on social media, with exceptions like IGN and stuff like that. Do you prefer it more digitally, like on social media, or traditionally with like newspapers and radio and stuff like that?
Oh no, listen, I will never ever prefer digital to bits of paper in my hand. It was, I mean, I fell in love with newspapers when I was at school. I was very lucky that we had a history teacher, and in the summer holidays, as an assignment, I remember that he said, right, I want you to pick a newspaper article every day and read it from 2 or 3 different newspapers' angles, and that you'll learn about journalistic bias and how it works. And so from my early teens, I was kind of surrounded with stacks of newsprint, and then later on magazines. I still think magazines are just they're just one of the sexiest things ever. Not just the video games magazines that were just so kind of alive in your hands, but again, I was lucky to write for magazines like FHM in the 90s and Smash Hits and music magazines. So no, I feel that, and I don't know what I think there's a certain extra level of care and love that goes with building something that is physical that you can hold in your hands, as opposed to a line of code that you kind of boot and slap on, and I think it's kind of much easier, it's quicker, and I think you care about it less than something which will be, as a lot of these video game magazines are, still stacked up in the bedrooms of 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old people today. As I mean, they're kind of artifacts of engagement in a way that online you're never going to get.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we sort of bringing Harry into it slightly. We make a magazine at college for students' best work, and we put that out every year. And we could put it online, but because it is an actual thing, authentic, I think is a word that we hear a lot. It is so tactile, tangible. It's a good word.
Yes.
It's something that makes them really proud. And although,
Yeah.
and it makes it real, I think. Would you say?
Yeah.
So it's so that area. Obviously, I love magazines anyway, so I've got more private eye magazines going back since the
That's fine.
yeah, about the 90s. But yeah,
and also the again without I was going to say without getting too pretentious, but I do write for the Guardian, so I'm allowed to be. Just that fact that you would read a newspaper and you would have the ink on your fingers, so it was part of you. It wasn't just coming in mentally. It was just this physical thing. You literally joined with it, and it was kind of it was. Absorbed by your body and was part of you forever. And I love things like that.
Yeah. What's the smell of it? Is it
yeah? Oh, yeah.
Paperboy. That was the smell of print. Is still, even when we get. I run a magazine myself, but we run one at college, and when that arrives in the post room, I get students to come down and sniff it. So, it's probably some dodgy chemical that's actually burning parts of the brain away. But all the same, if it fosters a love of magazines, that's okay. What's your next question, Harry? Where are you going with it now?
So I'm pretty sure you've joked about you and Games Master inventing esports. Are you proud of how it's evolved over the years, and do you ever think it will be on the level of actual sports?
Well, I think it is now. I look at the money that these kids make now. That they're paid as professional athletes, and I find that. I mean, I don't really. I don't like it when I watch it now. It's like it's just everyone's talking way too fast about League of Legends in infinite detail, and they're shouting at the same pitch. And there's not a lot of humour in it. But again, I think that's because that is a big business now, so they have to take it seriously. You can't really muck around making the kind of jokes that we used to make on Games Master about video games. But I think that's brilliant because. Going back to those little kids at the end of the 80s, beginning of the 90s, who were castigated and be made to feel they were somehow not as good as people who were in who were playing football for the school team instead. The fact that now they are genuine, they have a pathway to become genuine bona fide athletes. And it's like I would argue, listen, I love darts, I love snooker, but I don't think that they're I think that esports is physically and mentally as demanding in terms of training and practice as darts and snooker are. Definitely.
For sure, yeah. Do you think they'll ever have the cachet? Do you think they'll have, or more importantly, I suppose, the money, the audiences of more conventional sports broadcasting? So I know we have here in our college, we started an esports management course, and that's been oversubscribed 5 times over. We've got there's an arena across town from us designed just for esports, which is
really? Oh, wow.
Yeah, Confetti's X it's called, and it's wonderful. It's super high tech, massive screens. I don't know how much we use it, but all the same, it's there, and it does feel that. I don't know. I think we were discussing about how games have changed, and there's one point when you couldn't afford a console, you go down to the chip shop where there'd be a games machine there, and you'd crowd round. No one could afford to pay on it apart from the odd lad who would have a spare couple of 10p's, and that was Twitch back in our day. So, but the idea that sort of continuum, when I sort of think it's a bit weird, people watching people play games, but we did that. But do you think that will ever hit through? Do you think it will always be niche, or we're extrapolating 50 years in the future for this piece? In 50 years, can you see the FA Cup being second tier to I don't know, FIFA? Would be irony.
Well, I would be interested. I would imagine if you looked at the online viewing figures for esports, it's probably comparable to a lot of professional terrestrial broadcast, or certainly satellite cable broadcast audiences for sports. It's probably there now. So in 50 years, in 50 years, I'm not sure we'll have kind of broadcast TV channels as such. It will all just be, you'll just take what you want from an array of online services. And I think then that I think the audience for video game playing material will be as big, if not bigger, than any sport.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's fair. We talk about games as a we talked about this earlier, didn't we, about games as a cultural artifact and how they've long been probably seen that because they're more modern, I suppose, but they've been a poor relationship to, say, literature or filmmaking or art in itself. They've always been seen as a lower level, a non-serious one. What I was keen for Harry to engage with you on this piece was the fact that you talk of them as an integral part of life, an integral part of culture these days in a much more well, for the Guardian, so obviously serious in that way, but in a way which is sort of doesn't just say this is a game, this is how it plays, blah blah blah. It's actually talking about the wider concept of it and its wider effect on culture.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're a legitimate art form, and I'm always trying to bang that drum in the Guardian. They're they're the same as movies, as pictures, as anything else. I mean, my last piece I wrote for the Guardian was about a game, Clair Obscure, Expedition 33. Visually, it's art. The level of writing in games now, especially the writing, is astonishing. Proper dialogue written by professional, proper writers. The voice acting in Expedition 33 is as good as the acting as any movie or TV show I've seen.
Sure, yeah.
This year. So, I think that once we get rid of the generation of people who are older than me, then we'll be laughing, because then they will be genuinely accepted as art. It's just that generation above, like my parents' generation, who still can't get their head around the idea that these little things that we played in little cupboards on ZX Spectrums, tiny little pixelated things that are comparable to, Dr. Zhivago or whatever they grew up watching. And I think that there is something, it's not just the games today. I think if you look back at graphics from the ZX Spectrum and things like that, they are beautiful. You put them up on a wall. I mean, it's incredible. They're just so visually so arresting. And I think that there's ZX Spectrum game screens are like Liechtenstein's pop art really was, and it's like Warhol soup cans. I think ZX Spectrum loading screens are the Warhol soup cans. I think.
Blimey, yeah. With all the sense of jeopardy. Before instant games, we'd have to load up on tape.
Oh yeah.
And it'd take ages, and it'd flash, make some really great computer noises, and occasionally you get a black outline on a white screen. That meant it had crashed. And the sinking heart of that was
there was a dreaded message, Harry, in the same way that your generation hates to see that little circle buffering. Our equivalent was our tape loading error. And that's what it would say if the game hadn't loaded. And it especially happened if you had a dad like mine who worked offshore on the oil rigs and used to bring home C90 cassettes packed with pirate copies of games. And if you were lucky, 1 in every 20 would work, because they were just recording them on tape-to-tape machines.
Oh, geez, yeah.
It's like that,
It's a very different age, but your piece can incorporate that as well.
Oh, there was like a Red Ring of Death in the Xbox.
Red Ring of Death as well, of course. Right?
That's right, yeah.
It's, okay, where have you got any questions about where video games are going in the future? Or
it was like, I had a question where it was why do you think video games aren't like seen as the same level as books?
Well, we've just done, we've done that one about as cultural, strength of culture and stuff. But we can move on to,
well, I think actually, Harry, just to add on to that point, I think that it is, and it's just the unfortunate human nature thing that you fear that which you don't understand and you don't know, and so you try to keep it at arm's length, and that's that's the same with video games as it was when Elvis Presley wiggled his hips on television. It's the same. It's just the same. We don't. It's so strange when you think that humanity, on the one hand, is all about progress and invention. We're also terrified of anything new. Anything new that comes. I mean, God. I'm like that with AI now. I'm absolutely terrified of AI. So I think that's why games are not yet accepted as art, because there's still a generation or two who just viewed them as those things that
Yeah.
kids did in their bedrooms, you know. And so
I suppose that's
all.
personal computing. If it was sort of the first games machine came out early 80s, the Spectrum and stuff went mainstream. I think, I don't know, anyone below 50 is pretty much now a computer games are an integral part of their whole life now.
Yeah.
Well, my parents wouldn't have, well, they were very skeptical and stuff like that. So your parents are natives to computer games, but
I didn't introduce me to them.
Sorry?
My dad introduced me to
Your dad introduced you to games. There you go. It's like,
that's cool.
My dad was remarkably confused by the whole idea and concept that we want to make the TV do something ourselves rather than just be fed it. So it was. What do you think they'll be? Do you think games are? Do you think there's going to be an industry, or do you think it's going to go totally with the means of production being so available to us now? To any developer, anyone can actually turn a game. Do you think that's going to change, or do you think it's going to consolidate into big titles?
I think, do you know what? I think we're at a potential tipping point here, that whereas the world of indie games is absolutely astonishing. I mean, there's more creativity on titles you can access for a few quid on Steam than anywhere else. But at the other extreme, the huge big AAA big publishing market is almost sounding a death knell, because they're making cutbacks, they're laying people off, and the horrific thing this week where Electronic Arts was bought by Saudi money, including including a fund run by Jared Kushner, who may well be the Antichrist. I mean, that's just horrible. When
Trump's son-in-law, just to give you some context.
Yeah, a vile man. And so, I think that the AAA games are in that side of it is in a danger of where I honestly think that we might only get one or two of those titles a year. And it's almost like it will be a reset to those days that buoyed that first generation on the Spectrum and the Amiga, and it was a cottage industry. It was just loads of people sitting making stuff in the rooms. Because I while I love, big swanky graphics and stuff that's almost true to life, a game is a game is a game is a game. And I'm kind of I'm buoyed by the sheer amount of old school 2D pixelated games that are out there now that people are hearkening back to, which is wonderful, because there's just a purity to that money men can't attack, and I find that incredibly encouraging.
Weren't you? We were reading some of your articles earlier in the Guardian, and you were a Retro Bowl. Was it the
Retro Bowl?
Oh yeah,
Harry's a big fan of Retro Bowl as well.
Yeah, that's just a joy to play.
What, 70 seasons in one save?
I beg your pardon?
I've got 70 seasons in one save.
Have you? Fantastic.
So when we were talking about that, I was thinking, well, these are the games that this is like 16-bit or something from my day, and why don't you want to play that when you've got everything else? And then I remember how absolutely joyously playable most of these games were, and the original Grand Theft Auto was just off the scale of unplayable.
Well, it's because the best way to get creativity is actually to almost put more restrictions on someone. And the reason that those games back then are so terrific and have stood the test of times is you only had, 16K to work with. So you had to be so inventive and so clever about how you did it. Whereas today, when you're talking about gigabytes of memory, you could just be lazy. You just got to hand it in, half finished, and so I think that's why the generation that grew up programming on ZX Spectrums, they basically got every single molecule out of that tiny memory, and you had to be more creative and you had to be more intelligent and efficient to do that in a way that they don't have to be today. Now the horrific thing is this idea that AI can make a video game for you now. That you can actually say, right, I want to make Grand Theft Auto, but I want it to be pandas riding around on four-wheeled trout instead. And you will literally say that. You'll dictate that and leave it, and it will come up with it. And that's just horrible.
I mean, it does in one way, but the way you described it does sound really good as well. It's like,
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that's a pretty good game. I would buy that. You know.
That would be a cracker, but yeah, it's. So do you think AI is going to be a massive driving force, not just in games, but in games journalism? It's going to, you know, a lot of journalism these days is massively at danger at AI. We covered a lot of that on the course, and a lot is probably, well, maybe it's the toothpaste is out the tube now, so we're not putting it back. We have to get to terms with that. But do you think there's going to ever be a call for objectivity and human objectivity, that is, in games journalism?
Well, I mean, the scary thing is, Matt, is you're not going to be able to tell what is and what isn't. I think that that games companies, if you're releasing a big, $100 million budget title, you are going to just hit a button and have hundreds of AI objective reviews flooding online. And then so when you come to like Metacritic scores, that's gonna tailor all of that, because you're just going to have AI giving everything 90%, and it's going to give it such a bias that I think that the only kind of games journalism I think that you'll be able to trust is the type that is so obviously coming to you from a human being with bias, that they explain their bias. And again, that's what I try to do. I always feel guilty if I'm going to hammer a game. There's part of me that's aware, lots of people have worked really, really hard on this, and I shouldn't just trash it in the space of a couple of sentences without saying, I played this game with my kid, and my kid was really irritating me by how much he was going on about how I didn't understand the game. That's why I hate it. I think that's possibly the only way that journalism of any kind will be will be unidentifiable from AI slop.
So that authenticity, that very immediate authenticity, is probably going to be of value and stuff like that. And
because AI cannot do personality. I mean, it really can't.
No.
And that's the one hope we have as a society.
We can overcome that. So that's probably the answers you need. Is it anything more? Don't let me force you into.
No, not really.
Okay. Anything else you'd like to add, Dominik, about the future?
No, I think everything's covered. I think I'm just glad that there's still journalism courses going on.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
Weirdly, I came from journalism myself, and because of the death of local journalism, I took up teaching instead. So the last few years, but it's become more popular. The course has actually become more popular over time. We had record amounts of applications, and I try and ask students why they came, and I think there's just a general sense that that journalism actually is something that they have to fight for a little bit. That it is something which needs to be done well, rather than just done. There's no default anymore. It has to be actually. It gives them a chance to do that, which is really encouraging. It's there's a great sense of social justice and a willingness to actually work. Have authenticity, which I think has been taken for granted for many years. So.
No, 100%. We're living we're unfortunately living in a post-truth world just now.
Well,
which is why journalism is more important than ever.
Well, I spent a good part of last year trying to convince everyone that pigeons didn't exist, and it didn't work. But yeah, we do a lot of the course has changed massively to incorporate the fact that. Again, I think there's going to be a lot more currency in journalism through the fact of really not objectivity necessarily, but the ability to actually come from a trusted source, and that's going to become more and more important as any old slop can make its way into people's feeds.
Yeah,
we're going to be slower news, slower journalism is going to be a lot more, a lot more. Its cachet, its value is going to increase accordingly. I hope anyway, otherwise we are doomed. I'll do my tiny little bit of flag waving here to stop that, and hopefully so.
Good. But, more power to you guys. More
power to you. Thank you so much for doing this as well. I sort of told when Harry was discussing his piece, I just mentioned, we were looking at moments, and I remembered Games Master, I remembered stuff you did for Star and the Guardian and suggested you, and we didn't think we'd get you, to be honest. Thank you so much for taking the time, because obviously you're what, 3,000 miles away and 4 hours.
Yeah,
and,
pretty much. Yeah, I tell you that the thing I'm gladdest about and most relieved about in the whole of my career as a writer is that when I was the token liberal columnist on the Daily Star, that it was before the internet, because just based on the mail I would get from the more right-wing fringes of the readership, I just imagine, yeah. the thought of some of the what they would call woke lefty stuff that I wrote back then would just be so toxic. The comments underneath, I'm so relieved that I missed out on that.
Oh right, yeah, you clipped and yeah, it's a. Yeah, I used to write comment from local paper, and we had a rule: is never look at the comments.
No, you don't. No, don't ever. In fact, that's probably the best. That's probably the best thing you could learn on your whole journalism course, Harry. Yeah. Don't ever read online comments.
Take it as read. But thanks so much anyway. So it's been
my pleasure.
And we will. Well, Harry will send you a copy of his article when it's done.
Terrific. Yeah, I'd love to read it.
And yeah, and it might, if it makes a magazine, we can have a good sniff. So.
And on that bombshell.
Thanks so much, Dominic. That was wonderful. That was great.
No, nice. That's great. Nice talking to you, Mark. Nice talking to you, Harry. Good luck.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, stop recording.
Where's it started? How do we stop it?
Okay. But it just like does it automatically. There we go, stop recording.
Okay.